Welcome to Olds Mob 455. We ended up dropping the 73 442 Olds off at the place where it's going to be painted. Then on the way back, he picked up another project. Some of you guys might think he's a glutton for punishment, but this is a 64 Corvette that's been sitting for years, and it needs body work, but right now he's looking forward to just doing all the mechanical stuff, and he'll make videos of progress going through that. It's doing the brakes and getting the engine started up after sitting for 30 years, I think. And well, we'll go over, take a look around, got it racked up, and then we'll lift it up and see what's going on underneath. It's gold with gold interior, and it's a 327, and it's a 4-speed. And there's a situation where a 6'3" guy doesn't fit inside a little sports car. So we got to do a little finagling to get him just so he can fit inside. And we're going to rack it up, lift it up, take a look underneath, see what's going on. So it's a 300 horsepower, 327. It's got a 4-barrel, and you can see some aftermarket wiring and stuff. And we're gonna have to lube up the cylinders and take the carb off, go through the fuel, brakes. These are kind of unsafe. You only have one pot for all the brakes. So if you lose one brake line, there's no brakes.
Emergency brakes.
Are you going to update that or leave it stock?
No, stay in stock.
Looks okay underneath here. You got to get a battery. Battery's really a bitch to get out of the underneath the fender well. So you're hanging under here and you got to disconnect the battery leads and get it out from the fender.
This car had a frame off in the late 80s. Engine was rebuilt at that point, so I'm hoping the engine is still healthy. So it shouldn't be too much to get it going.
So it's got the double hump heads on it. Back in them days, those were the heads that were used on fuel injected cars and stuff. They got 202 intake valves and like 170 exhaust. See right here, you got these two humps right here on the front of the head, and that lets you know that they're the high performance heads. It's got a bigger harmonic balancer. There's only one belt. There's no power steering on this thing. The steering wheel's really big, and you gotta be moving while you're turning. So for me, I'm only 5'8.5", 9. See, I even have a problem with the steering wheel. I gotta get under here. A lot of these, well, I'm 67 years old, I can still push in the clutch, but a lot of guys that have hip problems, knee problems, that's why some of these vets just sit, because they can't push in the clutch anymore. And it's got a Hurst Competition Plus shifter, because the old Muncie shifter used to have a lot of slop. That feels nice. Still works smooth. Feels good for me. Oh, it's got bumpers that are still wrapped. They must have been re-chromed. This is the bar that goes in between, where the license plate would be. Right now, with the front bumper off, it makes the front nose of the Corvette look way cooler. You see the grill is all open. Little control, easy. It's got a wing window. What are those? This lets air through. Yeah, there's no air conditioning, so these cars get really hot in the summertime. All right. Oh. It's lifted up a little bit right now, but it's still a job to get out. So I see other bumpers. Here's the chrome that goes around all them spark plug wires. When you have a fiberglass car, the radio used to, they had solid core wires back in them days. And now we got resistors on the spark plugs and you got resistor wire, but the radio would be going, you'd hear the alternator going, so you had to have all this shielding, which is really a pain in the butt when you're changing spark plug wires, because this shielded that noise. This is where, you know, it went over and then all the wires came out. I think there's even a ground. It was a pain in the butt, and you'd get cut on this stuff. I mean, back when I was young, I had a whole bunch of friends that had Corvettes, and they beat the crap out of them. One time, this guy was doing a hole shot, and in the back, you'll see the suspension, it's independent in the back, and this bolt broke. And the whole body dropped down, then the tire hit the quarter panel and busted chunks of fiberglass out. We had to go pick up all the pieces and fiberglass it back together. But it's got a big ass speaker in the back. So this car has side pipes, just goes from the exhaust manifolds, and there's a series of 90-degree bends. And then there's a chambered muffler. It's like glass pack with squeezings along the glass pack. And you could tell when a lot of guys would buy the chrome hooker show tubes, but then in the back you had this panel that had the exhaust tips coming out. So you had to convert that over and put a panel, and you could tell because there'd be exhaust holes, and this doesn't have them. This is for racing, so you could just, they'd pop these open, and the race cars had bigger gas tanks, depending on what kind of race you did.
Well, open that up once. I don't know if you can see.
Oh, it's rusty going down.
Yeah, it's just nasty looking down there.
It smells like turpentine, too. That we'll have to drop the tank and clean it. It'll be cool starting up for the first time. Those are always fun moments, and sometimes tons of smoke comes out, and then as you drive, they get better.
Yeah, it looks like you replaced the bushings up in front here. But we're going to have to do some work in the back. Is that manual steering box leaking? Looks like it. The shock bushing is shot. It looks like a new shock.
So when you're lifting the body off of these, I remember I was with a bunch of my friends. We're all going to lift this body off of a Corvette, and it did not want to come. Didn't want to come. Also, we get up where the seat belts are. There was a cable that went across, and it bolted in somewhere. And that was the thing. We had to get underneath there and undo a nut, and then the body could come off. Because really, you know, seats being bolted to a fiberglass floor wouldn't really hold you in an accident. So you got to have something that goes to the frame for your seat belts. So you see they got a compartment here for a spare tire. You got to crawl underneath this thing. Everything's low, and they're a pain in the butt when you're on the side of the road with a flat tire. You got to get this down. You're using a little screw jack to get it up so you can change. This is that bolt I was telling you about. My buddy's broke right here. I let the wheel go flying up, and everybody had fatter tires on their cars than what they should have had. So it caught the body and busted it all up. You can see this needs to be replaced. This, you know, when you do a burnout, this whole thing vibrates. See, this is the thing that keeps the rear end from crawling up. As we'll get over here, and you're seeing how this rear axle design is just this center chunk, and it's got these bolt brackets for the controlling the wheel. You know, it's going up and down, but you don't want them. Some guys lower their cars and they got their wheels really canted in. You didn't want them the other way. So it is where the shock absorber goes. Now this is the control, and you got a bearing in there that's a bitch, and a lot of U-joints going around. For handling purposes, they didn't want the weight of the whole solid axle going up and down. And when you're racing and you get hit a bump inside a corner, one wheel going up would transfer energy into the other one, where this way you got three wheels that are still making contact, and one wheel can go up and down, and the thing's going to handle better. And all this weight is now sprung weight, and all this is unsprung weight. So like a Jaguar puts all their brakes and stuff on the center. They look nicer, but more of a pain in the butt when you got to do a brake job. So usually these bushings go bad in there. This bushing goes bad. And then when you do a burnout, this whole back end shakes. A lot of guys that drag raced would get rid of this and put a solid rear axle back in it. But then you have problems with the drive shaft. I mean, all this is a little rinky dink because it just stays still. And then if you had a solid axle again, you'd have to be clearancing everything for a drive shaft to move. That's the fiberglass floor pans. You can tell this is where the exhaust would come through if you had a regular exhaust. We had a video a long time ago. Oh, these used to have a canister with a big filter. They were actually good, but they were messy. So now he's got this adapter on here, and you can just spin on a regular filter. There's the Z bar, for pushing in the clutch. A lot of times this all vibrates and stuff, and as you're driving, this is going, Rah! There's a lot of noise. And then if you had the Rock Crusher transmission, it had straight cut gears, it'd be going, what? Then the exhaust is right near your ear going, blah. They're loud. This is that chambered muffler I was telling you about. It's just a glass pack, and they squeeze it so that it directs the flow through the glass packing. But you see how it goes down, 90, 90. Actually, they sound cool, but usually you take these cars out for an hour drive and then you put it away. So you're seeing all the suspension and the steering is 1964. Now everything's got a rack and pinion. This has drum brakes in 1964. So in 1965, they switched over to the disc brakes. We got oil dripping out of the fuel pump, and it's spraying back. So that'll be easy to fix. A new gasket we'll probably get a whole new fuel pump, or you can rebuild these. A lot of times with Corvettes, you want everything that was original to stay original, because it's all got date codes on it and stuff. But we want to clean this all up. This isn't very much of a sway bar. Sometimes guys would go with a fatter sway bar, and then it rides even rougher, but it stays flatter. You were thinking about getting an air dam? This is where they bolt up here, and then it looks like more of a race car with the dam. All the Camaros came out with them. You scoop more air in. This actually has a radiator that's at an angle, just because the roof line's so low. The radiator to cool this engine off has to be a certain size, and they got to tip back. But it looks cool with no bumper on it. When you have the bumper, there's a license plate here, and it goes out like that. And basically, what can it really do? You hit the bumpers, and it just goes into the body. Later years, like a 67, they had these knockoff wheels. And for racing, instead of doing 5 lug nuts, they'd have these spinners that they hit with a lead hammer or dead blow hammer. And the turbine wheel was a really expensive option, but these are hubcaps. So this just has these indentions. That's how you can tell it's a 64. In 65, they had 3 straight grills, and each year the grills on the side started changing. 67 had the most. They were really cool.
But they're open and they're functional.
Yeah. It's going to be a project, and doing the mechanicals and getting it timed up and running good is going to be great. See this right there? Right here is a spin-on cable, like a speedometer cable. but you'll see this gear right here. Most distributors don't have that, but it's cable operated. So these distributors that are cable operated are I mean, they gotta go, or else if they're dried up or stuck, it would twist the cable. But just this shaft would, well, the housing, you'd have to have the housing. But this is all this stuff for Corvettes is worth money. You know, to make it original. You can stick a drill on here and go down and spin the oil pump and flow the oil through the motor before you even fire it up, so it's not starting up dry.
I'm 6'4", I'm gonna get into this thing here. This wheel is an issue. The seat's all the way back. I mean, if you look at this, it's on this angle piece. So you can see my leg is right on the shifter. I mean, I guess I can go into the wheel a little bit. But I think what I'm going to do is, and here my leg's right on the door, and it's coming in at an angle to push the clutch in. Is I'm going to put a 13-inch wheel on this. This is 16, knock it down by 3 inches. And maybe get some sort of tilt column too.
Looks like a Carter carburetor, and it's probably like a 500. So this is going to be the situation that's going to keep us occupied for a while, because just to get the brakes done, the carb clean, the battery box cleaned out, and getting the motor running. When we get the motor started up, then it'll be another video.